Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Todd. If you're watching this video, then you sort of know the purpose of the video. What I'm trying to do for my family is to essentially, we have a farm, 30 acres in Oley, PA. We purchased it roughly 2 years ago, and it was a mess. We purchased it with the dream of kind of refinancing it, or I should say refurbishing it, building it, kind of restoring it back to what it was, a kind of a homestead, and putting some of the pieces of the property back together that were missing. This property originally was purchased by a developer who, if you can see according to the plot plan that I'm going to send with this, that he divided up into 3 lots. And there's one lot in particular that butts up against the property, which is the property in question. If we don't acquire that property, essentially we would have a person within 50 yards of the house. That's great for subdevelopment. But what we're looking for is to kind of restore the whole of this. My family and I are big into old school stuff, tradition, keeping things as it was. My boys are 16, going on 17, don't have cell phones, don't drive. My wife doesn't have a cell phone. This is about as high tech as we get. The one thing we love about this property is that there is no cell phone reception up here. But it is a property that is beautiful. It's been in some ways abused, but we want to steward it and do well by it. And our hope is that once we restore this farm, that we can bring students, kids who from inner city, broken homes, just youth who have had no chance of seeing what life is like outside of their current situation, and giving them a place to do everything from forestry to raising animals to planting blueberry bushes, propagating bushes, you name it. That's the purpose of the farm. And not only that, especially to give an inheritance to my boys, James and Jacob, that they can have with their family and grow and continue to add. There's a property that was across the street. The lady who grew up here with her 6 siblings, her dad sold her the 7 acres across the street. The family and I, the boys and I, already have plans of kind of at some point down the road, hopefully acquiring that, turning it into a you-pick-em farm. So again, kind of putting this property that was almost 400 acres that has dwindled down to 30, trying to put it back together, but put it back together in a way that keeps it historically, but keeps it functioning and keeps the value to it. So my wife is a teacher. I am a former teacher and assistant principal and principal. When we purchased this property, I was principal of a middle school. To make a long story short, and if you either go through one of my real good friends, Al, or anybody who knows me, I'm not a man who tolerates inconsistency well. I like to make sure that if you're doing something, it has a purpose. That when you do things, your yes is a yes and your no is a no. And especially if you're in education, if you're in the field of education, it's not politically motivated. There's nothing politically driven by it. That it is just for the sake of doing right by the kids. That's why we're there. And I had a very different view of, it's an urban school, essentially a semi-urban school. I had a different view of how bad these kids were and what it took to reach them. And it created some division, but I felt like I was on the right path and things were going. And then I took it to heart, had some issues, had to have surgery, ulcers, things of that nature, and was asked to do some things that for me was against my grain and totally unethical in my view, especially in relation to underprivileged families and kids who come to us to try and make sure that they are getting an education, but a future and role models who actually care about them. And when that came down to it, my wife and I said, I can't do it anymore. So I retired. We've been concentrating on the farm. We will refinance the farm within 12 to 18 months and bring the property under that as well. Now, I know you don't know me from Adam, and that's the case. I'm not looking for anything free. I'm not looking for you to give me $75,000. But I believe in what we're doing, and I know that sometimes everything in life, sometimes you go through, you got to be in the valley to see how far you have to climb. Sometimes we are by no means in a valley, but we are in a pinch. We have a deadline of March 31st to acquire that property, to get it under wraps. And at that point, then it is the time to restore the farm. We bought the farm, all 30 acres in the building, the house itself, the 2 outbuildings, and the barn for $265. On the work I've had done on it already, there's been an appraisal, rough appraisal, I should say, from the bank that came out to see how far I was going, and $265, and the guy who looked at it said it was close to $400, and it was 50% completed, based off of what it was and what we were doing and the plans that we had for it. So in order to make this happen, I'm looking for a bridge loan of $75,000. First, sorry, we have a little wireless connection problem, which I spoke to you about, said we can't make a wireless connection up here. First position mortgage on that 2-acre lot, and then timber rights on the whole property, which I said would be roughly between $85,000 and $115,000. Now, the reason I don't have a specific number as of yet is because the state of Pennsylvania, we've been dealing with spotted lanternflies, some borer beetles that have been digging into ash, and thankfully, it's a good thing, the timber companies don't come in and just kind of crush your property. They like you to have a management plan, which is done by the state. Person comes out, measures your trees, looks at your property, looks at the kind of the way it sets, what you have on there, how to steward it forward. Do you have to plant seedlings to match? They go through this whole procedure to make sure that if you're serious about stewarding the property and keeping it going in the future, and every 5 to 15 years taking off sections of it to not only keep it healthy but to profit from it, they do that for you. That takes anywhere from 2 to 4 months. So you know, once this is done, then we would have that, once that evaluation is done, and the DCNR and the PA state comes out and they would do that, we'd have the plan and the rough cut value for it if you clear cutted it, which I know is going to be somewhere around probably, you're looking probably about $250 to $500 a tree, and it's just based on the trees that are in here. It's there's a lot, and then future value on it as well. So what we're looking for is, we're saying that, you know, put in position, first position on the mortgage itself for the lot, also giving timber rights to the property, 18-month turnaround with a 10% return on money. Could throw in interest payments, whatever, and you know, it's negotiable. I can definitely work, but I'm under a wrap. Would like to have everything done, secured, and closed by the 31st. That's the deadline given by the property owner. I just happen to be sitting by one of our old oaks here, so to give you an idea, I'm sorry, yeah, it's a red oak. I'm 6'2", 240, so there are probably 10 or 15 like this just on this section of the property. But it's an oldie but a goodie, and if you know anything about the timbering, the value of that timber is pretty high. So what I'm going to do is I'm just actually going to walk down the property a bit. I'm going to stop the camera so you guys can sort of see what is here. I'll take different shots and explain where we're at. But I'm going to walk down next to a hardwood stand that's by the pond. It's been thinned out. Deer love it, but there's probably 30 or 40 maples in there as well. That's a hardwood stand. The majority of the timber on the property is poplar. There is some hickory on here. There is some ash that we're planning on getting off, and you can kind of, maybe you can still hear some of the birch, the paper birch, still have some of their leaves on it. Just a beautiful property. As we're through here, you might hear the fox and her cubs, her kit's kind of wailing. She's been out lately with them. I don't know what's going on, but she's been out quite often. So if she stops by, I'll introduce you. And again, so just to recap, looking for a $75,000 bridge loan. Comes with a first position on the lot itself, 18-month term, 10% interest return on the money. Can do interest payments on it for yearly interest only payments. Could also do a monthly payment if that's something that we'd be willing to talk about. And timber rights to not only that lot, but against my 30 acres as well, to make sure that worst case scenario, came down, that you got your money back out of it. Like I said, I'm not looking for anything free. I'm not looking for a gift. I just am looking for somebody that would kind of honor what we're doing, understand that we're just average hardworking folks that just want to make sure that what we do is right. And like I said, 18 months would be the max. I have a gut feeling it's not going to take that long. So the return on the money may actually be a lot sooner, but as you know, sometimes life doesn't go as you plan. So that's why I'm shooting for 18 months, but asking for 18 months, shooting for a lot sooner. So I'll be back in a minute. I'm going to show you the other parts of the property, and then I'll take you down to the orchard where the property is going to be. I'll walk you through the farmhouse. I take you up to the 3rd floor of the farmhouse, which was essentially gutted, and it's probably 75% complete. That should be done within the next week or so. And then I'll show you the property that is, we're talking about the 2-acre property that we're trying to secure. Okay, thank you very much. Take care.